What's up, guys? Back for another Star Wars video. In this video, we're going to talk about power creep. Now, I saw a funny post from IYO on Twitter. I'll have him linked in the description. Check out his YouTube, all that stuff, right? And it was a Tectone clip about Tectone saying that power creep was rough. You pretty much had to summon for the new unit. And Tectone gave some context to it and said he was mostly talking about the casual audience who doesn't play too much, doesn't grind, maybe doesn't know every single mechanic, or, maybe doesn't play the most optimally, doesn't spend too much, all that kind of stuff, right? Which, to be fair, yeah, if you aren't putting the time into the game, I feel like you shouldn't be able to be endgame content. That's just me personally, right? I know a lot of other gacha games, there is no way in hell you can pick up the game and within like a week or two be doing most of the endgame content. I just would. If there's a game like that and you guys enjoy that, that's you. I wouldn't enjoy that because it's like, okay, what's the point? If you can beat it that easily, then it's like, is it really endgame content, So I think, especially with the new mode, it's fine if you struggle with it. If you can't fully beat it, that's fine. That just means that you can gear up for the next one, right? So this one is super break oriented. So if you don't have Ron May, didn't summon for Firefly or Boot Hill, you don't have like Jue, Luca, or them built up, gonna be a bit rough, right? You can still clear it, obviously, because let's look at my third team. This was the team I used to clear the whole thing, right? Obviously, Firefly is on node 2, right? But I use the Akron team, and I know, oh, well, your Bronya's like E2 and your Akron's E2, right? I think you'd be completely fine using, I've seen so many E0 Akron runs with totally different units. You can do it, right? Obviously, Akron is the best DPS, but she's a character that a lot of people say, hey, you should summon, and she's a pretty popular character, so I feel like it's safe to say that most people have her, or if you didn't summon, maybe you have a DPS that's at least around her caliber. And I think it's starting to become really obvious that, I hate to say this and make it sound, like I'm degrading most of the players, but it's kind of a skill issue. And I'm not talking about a skill issue in the game, it's a skill issue on how you are using your resources, right? Now, I know I say all the time, if you want to summon for a character, you should, regardless if you like them or not, and I still stand by that. If you like a character and you enjoy using them, 100% way better. If I had to use a unit that I absolutely despise, I wouldn't find the game fun, right? But if I want to use a character, like, let's say I really enjoy Akron, if Akron was a terrible DPS, but I had fun using her, I feel like that'd be more enjoyable, right? However, I would fully be aware that me summoning for said character would not benefit my account. That's why I summoned for Firefly, so I'd have a 5-star break DPS. So I summoned for Ruin Meg, she is incredible support. That's why I summoned for Jinglu back in the day, because I needed a good DPS, right? All that stuff, you gotta take that into account, and people just don't, which is bizarre to me. That's why a lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't have a good shielder. It's like, well, Aventry's good. Hell, I even said he's almost a must summon, right? Obviously, Fu Xuan can work, right? But I'm seeing people run around here with Bailu and Link still, and like, well, they're cool and all, but I'm telling you, they're nowhere near as good as the 5-star options. And I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear. You can still clear the game with 4-star characters, but you can't be as comfy. And a lot of people take that to heart and just don't bother summoning. And then it's like, okay, well, you can use your favorite characters, but when you're using them with other characters who are, a little bit lower on the tier list, it starts to become a bit of a struggle, especially if you don't have good relics, if you don't play optimally. Obviously, if you're running like Blade Links, like Tingya, and let's say there's just 3 characters, right? And you're like, man, this is starting to get really hard. It's like, okay, well, Blade's, probably on the weaker side of the DPS scale, right? So obviously you might think about upgrading, or like Lynx is on the lower tier of the healer. Maybe you get like Adventuring or Fushuan or like Woho or Gallagher, right? And it's like, oh, Tingyun's still really good, right? But it's like, oh, well, maybe if you're using like, like Ron May, Robin, yada yada. Obviously, team synergy aside, I just picked 3 characters, right? Doesn't really matter. You get the gist, right? You might want to consider upgrading some of your characters when they're on the weaker side. But if you're like, oh, well, I have Lynx, I don't ever need to summon for a sustain. It's like, oh, I have, my E0 Bronya, why do I need to summon for support? And then you're wondering why, you know, Acheron can't carry you through the whole thing, and it's like, oh, why am I dying? It's like, oh, well, you're still using links, you know? Let me pull up a tier list real quick. I think if you do not have these characters, you are doing your account a disservice, right? Now, I'm going to put the DPS together. If you do not have Acheron, Jinglu, Firefly. Now, Donhang's a tricky one because I really do think that you need E2 or Sparkle with Donhang, but I'll put them here. If you do not have, we'll include, do I include Boot Hill on here? There he is. I'll say Boot Hill. If you do not have one of these 5 DPSs right here, I think you're doing, oh, I just realized that you can't see them. My bad. If you do not have one of these 5 DPSs, I think you're doing your account a disservice, and you should really think about getting them. Obviously, if you have characters like, if you have an E6 Zele or something like that, or you have a heavily invested character, like, if you have a heavily invested Zele, I feel like that's fine. Right? That's fine. But if you have your characters at E0, I think having one of these 5 characters as a DPS is going to be a good idea, right? Obviously, you could use, you know, Acheron to clear one stage, and then you have your, like, you know, your comfort character, you know, she's right here, she's cracked out, right, and she clears stuff for you. That's good, right? As long as you have one of the harder hitting characters on your account, I feel like that's okay. Same thing with sustains, right? If you have Quo, or if you have Venturine, or you have Gallagher with dupes, with dupes, very important. Big W, right? If you don't, maybe think about getting them. Same thing with supports, right? If you don't have Sparkle, if you don't have, where is she? If you don't have Robin, especially if you don't have Ruin May, I feel like Ruin May is also a very close to a must summon. You're doing your account a disservice. You should probably get them, right? Obviously, you don't need to just get every single character on this list, but you're gonna struggle if you don't have the best, you know, some of the best characters. And, you know, if it's like, oh, well, I skipped all these characters so I could summon for, like, you know, my bestie, like Argenti. It's like, oh, well, that's probably why you're struggling. You know, Argenti, he's cool, but he ain't gonna be soloing the new endgame or anything, right? So I feel like people are just poor skill management, poor, you know, planning ahead summon wise. They don't use your Jades as best. Now, obviously, if you look on the screen, I know people probably have already commented this. Well, you didn't beat it with the right score with this team. That is fair, right? And another thing that comes with it is people don't max out their characters. So this took me a while to try to, like, figure out what I was doing. So for this team, right, I got just under the score I wanted, because you want to get 3,300. This team, you know, light cone, no light cone. I'm using the jumper one, right? Traces, we're cooking, right? Now this team did pretty well, and we got, you know, it does not show it here. Oh, I have to go back. All right, so we got 3,201, meaning this team would just have to pick up the slack slightly and get 3,400, and we'd be good to go. I didn't get it. Bad RNG. I misplayed like once too, which did suck. But the difference between this team is, well, we go to the traces, you know, I'm missing an attack one. You know, I don't think the basic attack matters too much. On this one, we're missing imaginary damage, and we could level up a bit more. Plus, the Lycon's level 70. On this one, Lycon's level 70. 5 more levels. Traces, yeah, I know, my Gallagher's a bit low, you know. He cooked, so I didn't really think he needed it, and I was focusing on other characters. Obviously, we had the traces up, would be a lot different. Gwenifin, right? Same thing. Traces need to be leveled up. We have some break effect. Yeah, some break effect right there. Some fire damage. Light cone only level 70. Character only level 70. Obviously, this could help out a ton. There's been many times where I've lost a lot of points because I've let something live, and then I've missed a rotation of damage on Argenti. I do think that I could probably iron out these scores a little bit, especially if it had those 3 units at max traces, which is another thing people need to work on. Max out your traces, max out your light cones. Trust me, a bit of a damage boost goes a long way. It could mean, you know, breaking the enemy to do more damage. It could mean killing an ad so you could focus on something else. Whatever it may be, you gotta max out your characters, because people going in saying there's power creep in the game and the game's to pay to win, and they pull up and their team is like either this weird abomination, or, you know, their Acheron you know, has light cone, has good relics, and then you look at the traces and they're all like 6, and you're like, okay, what's happening here? Like, relic luck can only go so far too. Even if you have a pretty crappy build, as long as you have the team synergy going and you know what you're doing, I feel like that'll be fine, right? I'm rocking really crappy relics most of the time. Like my Volko's relics have like 20% crit damage or like 32% break effect. They have like no actual rolls in HP and whatnot, and the unit does just fine, right? But other than that, I'm pretty much done rambling. A lot of people are coming out of the woodworks and saying that this game has become way too pay to win, and I think it's just more so poor research poor resource management. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that this new endgame mode was hard? Do you think the power creep is relevant? I do think that a lot of the new characters are leagues better than the ones that came out during launch, but I mean, hey, we're over a year into the game. It's a gacha game. That stuff's gonna happen, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as people think when it comes to the actual, you know, beating the game modes that come out. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments about everything. I'll have a link to the IO tweet in the comments or the description, one of the two, right? And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.